Saira, good morning, dear children. Today I'll be continuing the same lesson, the ancient civilization, class 6th, subject social science, part 15 and chapter 4. So in part 14, I have explained to you in detail about the Roman civilization and their political history. So Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar were the most important persons in the political history of Rome. So Pompey, Crassus and Julius Caesar formed the first triumvirate in Rome. So they ruled over different regions as military generals. Now we will understand in detail about the Julius Caesar. So with the death of Crassus, rivalry for power grew between Pompey and Caesar. So in the war, Pompey was murdered by Caesar, and Caesar defeated Egypt and fell in love with the beautiful Egyptian queen Cleopatra. So he made himself a dictator and abolished the Republic of Rome. And lastly, he was assassinated by his enemies. So during the period of Julius Caesar, agriculture, industry and trade flourished, and Julian calendar was introduced, and Augustus Caesar continued the works of Caesar. So this is part 14. Now we will proceed to part 15 and we will understand in detail about Augustus Caesar. So Augustus Caesar first name was Octavius. His name was Octavius. Mark Antony, Lapidus and Octavius formed the second triumvirate. So Octavius shared power with Mark Antony by driving away Lepidus and finally defeated Antony. So Augustus Caesar's first name was Octavius. His first name was Octavius. So Mark Antony, Lapidus and Octavius formed the second triumvirate. So who were the first triumvirate? Pompey, Crassus and Julius Caesar formed the first triumvirate, and the second triumvirate were Octavius, Mark Antony and Lepidus. And Octavius shared power. So Octavius or Augustus Caesar, they shared power with Mark Antony by driving away Lepidus, and Augustus Caesar finally defeated Antony, though he shared power with him. And Octavius became the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. So who was the powerful man in the Roman Empire? Augustus Caesar or Octavius or became the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. So his period is known as the golden age of Roman Empire. So please keep it in mind that which period is called the golden age of Roman Empire. So the period of Augustus Caesar was called as the golden age of Roman Empire. Jesus Christ is known to have lived during this period. He introduced many social reforms and the rule was peaceful. So Augustus Caesar introduced many social reforms. So social reforms refers to any attempt that seeks to have correction or any injustice in a society. So social reforms refers to any attempt that seeks to correct any injustice in a society. It may be like abolition, human rights, etc. And so Augustus Caesar introduced many social reforms and the rule was peaceful. The rule was peaceful. So which was called as the Roman peace. As the rule was peaceful, it was called as the Roman peace. So naturally, economic and cultural progress was achieved. naturally economic. So what is the meaning of economic? So economic is a social science concerned with the production, distribution and consumption of goods and services. So economic is a social science concerned with the production, distribution and consumption of goods and services. And cultural means it is the customs, ideas, beliefs of a society or a country. So during this period, economic and cultural progress was achieved. So the successors of Augustus were incompetent. The successors after Augustus, the other rulers were incompetent. Incompetent means they were very weak. They lacked skill and they were defeated by the tribal invaders, resulting in the decline of Roman Empire. So after Augustus, other rulers were very weak, they lacked skill, so they were defeated by the tribal invaders in the decline of Roman Empire. And the contributions of Roman civilization. Romans made great contributions to the literary world. So, Romans made great contributions to the literary world. Virgil was a great poet and wrote an epic, Aeneid. So, Virgil was a great poet and he wrote an epic. Epic contains of heroic stories. So, that is called Aeneid. And Ovid was another great poet, and Cicero and Plato were great literary figures. And Julius Caesar himself was a good historian. So, historian is a person who studies history. And Cato, Cicero, Seneca were famous philosophers. So, I have told you who is a philosopher. So, a person who has developed a set of ideas and beliefs about the meaning of life. So they are called as philosophers. So Cato, Cicero, Seneca were famous philosophers. So they advocated peaceful coexistence with nature. So they advocated means they recommended peaceful coexistence with nature. The Colosseum and amphitheatre are the best examples of Roman architecture. Colosseum and amphitheatre are the best examples of Roman architecture. And Cupid statue and Adapasis sculptures are the best example of the art of sculpting. So, Cupid's statue and Adapasis sculptures are the best example of the art of sculpting. So Romans had a deep knowledge in science and mathematics. So Romans had a deep knowledge in science and mathematics. So Pliny wrote the encyclopedia known as Natural History. So Pliny wrote the encyclopedia known as Natural History. So what do you mean by encyclopedia? So it is a book or a set of books that gives information about many subjects, and these books are arranged in the order of the alphabet from A to Z. So encyclopedia is a book or a set of books that gives information about many subjects, and these books are arranged in the order of the alphabet from A to Z. So that encyclopedia, Pliny wrote the encyclopedia known as Natural History. And Galen was a famous surgeon, and Strabo and Ptolemy were famous geologists. Galen was a famous surgeon. Surgeon means he is a doctors who does operations. So he is called a surgeon. And Strabo and Ptolemy were famous geologists. So geologist means who study the rocks and they think about the way they are formed. So geologists study rocks and the way they are formed. So they are called as geologists. And Roman law served as a basis for the future laws. So Roman law was very peaceful, so it served as the basis for the future laws. Latin was the language of the Roman Empire. So which was the language of the Roman Empire? Latin. Latin was the language of the Roman Empire. So, and even today, the words from Latin are used in science, law, and other branches of knowledge. So Galen was a famous surgeon. Surgeon means a doctor who operates. And Strabo and Ptolemy were famous geologists. So geologists, I have told you, it is a study of rocks and the way they are formed. And Roman law served as the basis for the future laws, as Roman law was considered as peaceful. So this served as a basis for the future laws. So Latin was the language of the Roman Empire, and even today the words from Latin are used in science, law, and other branches of knowledge. So I think you have understood this. I am just summarizing the whole video. Augustus Caesar first name was Octavius. So his first name was Octavius. Mark Antony, Lapidus, and Octavius formed the second triumvirate. And Octavius became the most powerful man in the Roman Empire. So he introduced many social reforms and the rule was peaceful, so which was called as the Roman peace. Economic and cultural progress was achieved during his period. And Virgil was a great poet and wrote an epic Aeneid. Ovid was another great poet. Cicero and Plato were great literary figures. Julius Caesar himself was a good historian. Cato, Cicero, Seneca were famous philosophers. So the Colosseum and amphitheatre are the best examples of Roman architecture. Cupid statue and Arapacis sculptures are the best examples of the art of sculpting. Romans had a deep knowledge in science and mathematics. Pliny wrote the encyclopedia known as Natural History. Galen was a famous surgeon and Strabo and Ptolemy were famous geologists. Latin was the language of the Roman Empire, and even today Latin are used in science, law, and other branches of knowledge. So I think you have understood. So I am asking some of the questions relating to this video. So you should be ready to answer all these questions. Who formed the second triumvirate? Who formed the second triumvirate? And who was the most powerful man in the Roman Empire? Who was the most powerful man in the Roman Empire? Name the great poet and his works. Who were the great literary figures? Name the best examples of Roman architecture. And name the best examples of sculptures of Roman civilization. Who wrote the encyclopedia known as Natural History? And who were the famous surgeon and geologists? And which was the language of Roman Empire? So in this video I have asked you 9 questions. So go through the video. It will be very easy for you to answer all these 9 questions. So thank you. Sai Ram.